Okay, so colleagues, then this is an interesting part of our studies or of our research. Therefore, what we should do then is that we should try to understand this concept of paradigm well, so that when you apply it accordingly. So what then will be the paradigm? Before we come to the paradigm, I think we first have to understand ourselves. Who are we and where are we? And then from there, our discussion then will go towards what is called the paradigm. But the main question here, colleagues, is that you need to ask yourself, where are you when you own your body, you own your hand, you own your leg, you own all the things that you seem to own? Where are you owning these things from? Then that has to be the driver for you to go towards selecting a relevant paradigm. So when you know that, you stand a better chance to deal with the...
Sorry, Prof.
Yes.
Colleagues and students, may I request that you mute yourself because the presenter is disrupted while you are your video are not switched off. I mean, on off. Your microphones are not switched off on. To avoid the background noise, please switch off your audio. Thank you so much. You can carry on, Prof.
Okay, thank you for that. So questioning where we are in the bodies that we have has been tried by several people to try to make sure that we understand our position in the body that we are creating. As you can see, that the body that we are creating, it's beautiful, or it's handsome, and is everything that you can think of. So when those bodies are like that, it means there's something special inside us that created those bodies. So now, if there's something special in us, if we don't concentrate on it, we may have a situation where we may not understand exactly what we need. Therefore, if we know where we are right now, we'll be able to select a relevant paradigm. So scientists then tried their best to locate where we are, because they were questioning the issue that you cut your leg, but you still have life. You cut your arm, you still have life. You take away your kidney, but you still have life, which means all these things are not you, but there are things that you own. So when you own these things, then the question will be, where are you, where you are owning them? So scientists then came to a conclusion to say that the only thing that you cannot take away and you continue to be alive is the brain. So this brain then produces information which we call is the mind. So now people are then in the mind. If they're in the mind, then what are they doing there? They are doing what we can say are the movement or the actions that are directed by the mind. So the mind will direct the action, and then the action will take place according to how the mind is directing. Oh, let me try to unmute these, all right. Okay, so then when the mind then is operating like that, scientists then started to divide it into three categories, to say the mind is divided into three categories. So there's this first part which is called unconscious mind. Unconscious mind is it's a system that runs your body. So you are able to breathe. Your heart is, you have your heartbeat, you have a digestive system, you can digest, you eat food and then it gets digested. So all those actions that are done by your body are then identified as coming from the unconscious mind. So when they are happening as the internal part of us, they are recorded by means of what we call a subconscious mind. So subconscious mind is recording all the actions that are happening in our bodies. It can be the heartbeat, it can be the breathing and this. All those are then recorded here. So I know how I breathe because my subconscious mind has recorded that. And then if I also want to question what is in the subconscious mind, because we can question what we have as the belief, and the feeling, the habit, superstition, all those things that are residing inside the subconscious mind. We can question them. How we question them? We need to concentrate using what you call a conscious mind. So people have conscious mind, which they can use to distinguish between what is good for them and what is bad for them. But the subconscious mind cannot distinguish between those two. All what is doing is to store all the experiences that we experience outside us and inside us. So as a result of that, we end up having certain tools that we believe they exist. They really exist out there, but yet we are then controlled by our beliefs. So in other words, they don't exist, but they are controlled by beliefs. So then with the issue of paradigms, then paradigms don't give us the truth, which is objective reality, but we believe that they give us something to work, because in fact, they can give us the reality, but they are not reality themselves. So paradigms are just our beliefs that this is what I believe, therefore I use it. I'll give you an example. If you were to have a blue icon on your desktop, which you did today, because we had to double click the icon called Zoom. So that icon is blue on the desktop there. But what happened then after clicking it? It will not become blue, but it will be black or this and this. It will have different colors, but you used the icon, the blue icon, to open it. So that icon then will give you, will explain the situation of Zoom. So, but the icon is not Zoom as such. Zoom is what was created by Eric Hain, who created it in order for us to use it for conferencing and everything. What he did then, he had to combine circuits and voltages. Those circuits and voltages are the objective reality of Zoom. So the combination of them, they've produced an objective reality of Zoom. So that what we see then as the users, we see what is only our sensory candy or sensory sweets or sensory tools. But in the language of that computer, it will be a user interface. So then paradigm, take a paradigm then like this user interface, the blue icon. Behind this blue icon, there were voltages and circuits that were constructed in order to produce Zoom. Now, when we use Zoom, we think that we know the objective reality of Zoom, yet we don't know what is there inside that icon. So we just click the icon and end up using it. So we were then shaped as human to believe in that icon, that the icon represent objective reality of Zoom. But the icon does not represent the
Sorry, Prof.
objective reality of Zoom.
Sorry, Prof.
It has to be, okay.
Sorry, Prof.
I'm trying to switch. Yeah.
Students, please make sure that you mute yourself because the background noise disturbs us and the presenter as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so this icon then represents the paradigm. So the paradigm is this icon that helps us to control the objective reality of Zoom. We control Zoom well using just this icon, which is on the desktop of our computers. So now we don't know whether Eric had a plan when it was designed, or Eric did not have a plan when it was designed, but what is happening is that we know that Zoom it's a conference software that we can use. Then we use it effectively according to how we want. But it doesn't mean that the icon is really representing the objective reality of Zoom. Therefore, with the paradigm that we choose, then we choose this icon to say, I take the icon for Zoom in order for me to teach. But others will say, no, Zoom is not good enough. Let's take Microsoft Teams. They will take Microsoft Teams. You see now, they will all teach in the same way or have the meeting in the same way. Therefore, what we call then a paradigm is just our way of thinking. So it's something that we have here as the belief that when I do something, I do it like this and this. So whatever we have then that is constructed by other people is just take it like an icon, which will click and then it is not the objective reality of what we really need. So as the paradigms have the same thing. So paradigms then are shaped by two ideas of the world. So two world ideas. So the two world ideas then seem to be, the first one is that theory of creationism. So there's a theory of creationism, which is the first one to say that every species was divinely created. So people are subscribing there. So when they choose a paradigm, they choose something that indicates the creationism. But whereas others will choose something that will represent evolutionary theory, that no, everything is naturally created and inheritance, is the idea of the day. But today we are not here then to unpack these two world ideologies or that constitute our paradigms. So what we are here to do then is we are here to deal with the issues of research paradigm. So research paradigm in education or in humanities, they seem to be, but in all spaces, they seem to be divided into three. There are paradigms that talk about unstructured way of doing things, where opinions of the people out there are important. So when you choose the paradigm, you have to choose to make sure that it will introduce you to a certain idea which is shared by a certain group, by a social group out there. So those paradigms tend to be horizontally driven, because when you use that paradigm, you can start your research anywhere. You may start by generating your data before you talk about literature and all these other things. Or you may start with the literature, or you may start with a theory. Those paradigms will be flexible enough for you to start anywhere because they are not structured. So if you have someone, a certain colleague, friends of yours, or supervisor who may suggest that, no, do things like this, with these paradigms that are horizontally driven, you are able to follow that notion, and then you can change it later again because it doesn't have a prescribed or standard method that one has to follow. So an example of that, we may talk about interpretivist paradigm. Interpretivist paradigm may allow you even to generate data and then do things on your own without necessarily choosing a theory. Then you choose a theory very late. So a good example is when you were to go to a traditional leader's place and then conduct a study there. You got there with Western theories to try to conduct a study, but only to find that you cannot, they are not applicable. Therefore, what you need then, it's a theory that will be generated by means of your data. So you start by data generation. You generate the data, and then you start now to put some themes that are generated from the data. Then you produce a theory now, a certain icon now, which may be used by other people. So now, when then you generate that, it will be indicated as a theory that so and so produced this particular theory, but the theory there is informed by your paradigm, which is interpretivist paradigm. So paradigms then are working anywhere we go. For example, in research, as I've indicated, you have what you call interpretivist paradigm, which allow the unstructured way of doing things. And then if you go to leadership, they'll tell you about transformational processes or transformational leadership. So transformational leadership is following what you call this unstructured way of doing things. If you go to business, they will tell you that I run my business, but I don't have what you call a business plan. So why do I need business plan for? Because this company or this organization is working well without a vision or without a plan. All what we do is serve people. If we sell fruits, we sell fruits. Why do we then have to have a business plan? You see the paradigms, that issue of interpretivist paradigm, you say it can go as far as business industries, it can go as far as leadership programs, it can go as far as curriculum programs. In curriculum programs, they will say this is outcomes-driven approach or outcomes-based curriculum. So you can see there that outcomes can be achieved without necessarily following a prescribed content, but you can do that. So these paradigms then are in line with what you are doing in your discipline. You need to be aware which of these paradigms is influencing what you are doing. Because if you are saying, no, I like the notion of transformational leadership, which means the paradigms that you are aligning with are that of interpretivist paradigm and others that are allowing the unstructured way of doing things. But then on the other hand, you have what you call then the vertical one, the vertical or structured paradigms. So structured paradigms, they manipulate, they deal with objects. So when they deal with objects, they create objects in order to be used by people. But this side, the horizontal one, those paradigms prepare people in order to use what was created by those who are coming from the structured paradigms. So in a way, these are both good, because when you talk about vertical or structured paradigm coming from leadership, they will talk about instructional leadership. When you go to curriculum, they will tell you about content-centeredness or performance curriculum. And then when you go to business industry, they will simply say, you can't start a program without, you can't start your project without a business plan. We need a business plan which will tell us exactly what we are dealing with here. So your discipline then is drawing from here and give new terms. So you need to be aware of those terms then that because they are all generated by a certain paradigm. It's just that they may your discipline may not tell you that we have borrowed this from this paradigm. So the vertical ones then are normally driven by positivist paradigm. Those are positivist paradigm. Where they say there's one answer only, but you may combine them. So somewhere you need to understand that they may be combined, where you put the need in front of you and then you work according to the need. So, which is semi-structured paradigm. So now I'll then I'll analyze, give example of each of these in my next slide. But for this one, what is happening is that you think about the world that have these three things. When you do what is unplanned, remember that you are now starting to follow that horizontal unstructured way of doing things. So the paradigms that are allowing that, understand them so that you select better. And then when you structure again, you must understand that there are paradigms that claim to have facts, to say we build on facts because they bring theories and work on theories. Like when you deal with a positivist study, framed by positivist paradigm, there you are forced to have a theory to measure what you are testing. So when you have that, you know that you cannot just jump without that theory. Therefore, the theory is forcing you to structure what you are doing. That is structured way of doing that. But at the same time, you may have paradigms that may take both the structured way of doing things and the unstructured way of doing things. So when that is happening, you must just try to make sure that you work according to how these things are structured, what the needs are, and then you follow the needs. So when we talk about the example of vertical or structured paradigms, if we talk about it in terms of building, you build a house in urban area, you need a plan. Therefore, that plan becomes your tool for doing that. But you build a house, maybe somewhere in rural area, you may not necessarily need a plan. You can build a plan without that. So there's no such thing as a best thing for all of us in the world, but it's only best for you according to the perspectives or according to the paradigm which shapes your belief. If we talk about Eric, when Eric developed Zoom, we may simply ask then to say, we have this icon which we use it well and is working well. But if we want to know the objective reality of it, we may even ask him to say, tell us, when you developed Zoom, what did you do? Did you have a plan of steps that we have done in order to follow the steps, which is that of positivist, which is vertical? Or did you design it and then after you then wrote the steps that is of horizontal? So the truth about designing Zoom will depend on how far we can go in interrogating Eric on what he has developed as Zoom. But knowing objective reality sometimes is not helping, because the level of our experience through our subconscious mind, you find that is limited for us to know the objective reality of it, but using the interface, which is the user interface, we work well without any stress. As long as it is working, we work well to address our needs. You see, we use Zoom, but we don't know the voltages and circuits that were constructed there. So knowing the icon without knowing that objective reality is helping us. We don't have a problem. But there are cases where we have to come closer to the objective reality if now it's troubling us. But if it doesn't trouble us, then user interface, it's good enough to shape what you are doing. So paradigms are like that. We choose paradigms that shape our experiences, you go and go. Then later you start to say, but this paradigm is limited here and there and there. Then what do? You find yourself moving your tools, your belief to this new paradigm. That will also be good because you are growing. But always remember, you are not at the end where you are saying you have objective reality of what we are interrogating with your paradigm. What you have is just the user interface. You are analyzing the truth that is out there. So paradigms then are not the truth, but they help us to explain the truth and control the truth. So in humanities then, or education, you find that there are there are quite a number of paradigms that are dominating. So mostly there are four. They are categorized into four. So then maybe the question will come back now to say, then what is paradigm then? A paradigm then, a research paradigm, is a philosophical way of thinking or set of common beliefs, agreement, shared between scientists about how problems should be understood and addressed. So remember 2020, 2021, everyone was shocked to say, how are we going to teach? Because it's locked down. Then people like Eric and the Bill Gates of this world started to say, don't worry. Here is Microsoft Teams. Use that to teach, to save your academic calendar or academic year. And then Eric said, no, you can borrow, although I developed this for business activities, but you can use it for teaching. Then we started to use what? Zoom. So when we use those, we use them to understand our teaching. So we had to teach using them. And also we wanted to address the issue of keeping our student without learning. We managed to use it. So that's what the paradigm do. So think of that Zoom icon as the paradigm that we have used to teach and also address the problems of teaching. That's what the paradigm will do. So when you choose a paradigm, you must know that you choose something that will tell you about the truth which you don't even know. So you control the truth that you don't even know. So we'll be able to control teaching. We say this is effective way of teaching accordingly. Then because we had that's what you call Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Teams, etc., etc. So we have that. Now, the four dominating that I would like to present to you, ladies and gentlemen, is the first called a positivist paradigm. There is positivist paradigm. Positivist paradigm, others have moved it to say it's also post-positivist, because it has advanced from what it says before. It has moved now. Before it was saying there is only one answer which we can get through investigation. So others try to challenge it to say, yes, the answer is there, but we may not access it. Like we have voltages that constructed Zoom voltages and circuit, but we cannot access them. All what we can do is just to use the icon only. So now that's what they are saying. They are saying, even if the voltages and circuits are out there, they are not accessible to us, but they exist as the truth in making what you call Zoom. And then that's why they say it should be post-positivist. But positivist will simply say there is just one truth about anything in this world. Then we move then to interpretivist paradigm. Interpretivist paradigm it has its own way of doing things, where they ended, where others will frame it as a constructivism paradigm or constructivist paradigm. And then we have critical paradigm, where others will simply say transformative paradigm. And then we also have what you call pragmatic paradigm. So these are the four that are normally dominating our education system or humanities. But then when you read about them, so in other words, when you choose them on the basis of four underpinning concepts that constitute the effectiveness of that particular paradigm. So Lincoln and Guma will simply say those are epistemology. So epistemology, how we know something or how we know the truth or reality. And then we have ontology, which is the nature of reality. What is the nature of reality here? And then we have methodologies that are in line with that paradigm. You need to make sure you know them, and then you follow those methods that are in line with your paradigm. We have axiology. What are the ethical issues around that paradigm? So what are the guiding issues when you want to deal with the ethics of your paradigm? So those are there standing like that. And then when you look at each one of them, you may have a positivist paradigm like this. Positivist paradigm will then start to say what we have need to be scientifically driven. So positivist paradigm then is based on scientific methods of investigation, where experimentation, observation, and reasons based on experiences ought to be the basis of a basis for our understanding of human behavior. And therefore, the only legitimate means of extending knowledge and human understanding is when you do experimentation, something that you can observe. So for them, they need what you call science to give us the truth. So the instrument or the object may represent that particular truth. And then our investigation will then have to go through that process. For example, if I want to know how long is the pen, that when I have a pen, I want to know the length of the pen. All what I do, I need to take a tape measure, and then I'll believe the tape measure that this thing is 25 centimeters. I'll believe the object. But if you were to take another paradigm, they were not going to believe what the object gave you as 25%. But here, with that instrument, which is the tape measure or the ruler, and then which will measure this thing, even if you go to America, you go to UK, you go to Australia, then they will have to use the same tool to give you the same answer. That's why they say they only have one answer in anything, because they will measure that with a certain instrument. So research located in this paradigm rely on deductive logic, formulation of hypotheses, testing of hypotheses, offering operational definition and mathematical equation. So it produces all those which may represent the icon if you talk about Zoom. It produces all those which you can use to look at the truth. So you can use that to look at the truth. For example, you have a specific hypothesis. You cannot measure the hypothesis without a certain tool or a certain theory of that. If, for example, if you say effectiveness of drilling method, you need a theory of effectiveness in order to measure how effective is the drilling method. So you need to have that. So when you generate an hypothesis, the hypothesis has to be measurable so that you're able to measure the hypothesis. So that's why they produce equations, calculations, expressions. All those will help you to give you the answer. So if you want the length of the pen, so the instrument you have a tape measure, you have ruler, so you can measure those with that. So it will give you exactly the same answer. So with variables then, when you deal with variables, some example is when you are saying drilling method produces high performance. So your drilling method now will be a dependent variable. And then performance will be independent variables. So you need to manipulate these two variables then in such a way that you see if there is a relationship between the two. Because it may happen that those students achieved well, performed well because of this drilling method. Or you may find that if you don't test, you assume that they performed well because of drilling method. Yet these students could pass even if you use any other method because of their internal intelligence. But now, when you conduct a study then within the frame of positivist paradigm, you make sure that whatever you do, the variables that you have should be able to test them, and then they must show exactly how they've managed to produce that high performance. So here we talk about numbers nicely, where we deal with the numbers. So there are methods that you'll normally come across when you use this paradigm, which is positivist paradigm. Methods like experimentation, where you do experiment and then you measure those issues that are coming through your experiment. And then you may use correlation method, where you want to see the difference between two methods, or you can have comparative study, where you compare those students who were given laptops versus those that were not given laptops. And then you see if performance comparing the two is the same or is not the same. And then you start to say who are performing well here between the two. If those that were given laptops or computers or phones are performing well, it may then conclude that, a study may conclude that there is an influence from this issue of giving your students some tablet or computer or phones. But those studies then are coming under this paradigm, which is positivist paradigm. Usually, if you go to engineering, you go to science subjects, science disciplines out there, they will use that because for them, they believe that they have to follow that paradigm, whether they like it or not. For example, if a civil engineer decides to design a bridge, and there are standards that are given, and the steps that are given to say, when you design a slab, you should follow this method. If that method has 20 steps, the engineer there will have to follow those steps. So the steps now are indicating that they are producing the actual, the objective, really, the answer. Because when the bridge is designed according to that, then when something is happening, then the inspectors will go back to that design to say, okay, let's see how you design. Or that it was supposed to be 3 there, but you have 2. So there's an error in your calculation that produced this particular slab. Therefore, if you were then to take another paradigm in designing that, you were going to have mistakes, because the other paradigm may simply say, ask the opinion from people, then people will tell you, no, the slope for this place must be 100 and must be 250 centimeters or millimeters. Or in my place, it should be like this and this, and then only to find that the load will then collapse the whole bridge or the whole structure. Therefore, they will use what is prescribed so that when there's a problem, they go back to the steps and indicate that we follow the standardized process, which means the process is no longer, the system is no longer working because I calculated well, I had everything well. So that's what they normally do then. So the methods, then we also have surveys. The surveys are falling under this category of what you call a positivist paradigm. What about its epistemology then? Its epistemology then, epistemology of positivist paradigm is said to be objectivist, which means we can gain knowledge which help us to become more objective in understanding what we are doing. So what the world around us is giving us. So here they are saying we can get the truth, because what the truth will be that we'll have to go to Eric, who designed Zoom, if I use that as an example, and ask him to say, where are the steps that we used in order to create Zoom? So if he gives us that, then we have enough knowledge. We have objective knowledge about Zoom. So that's what the epistemology of this paradigm will say. We say, you go there to him and then you get to the steps, then you will be able to understand the world around you when it comes to Zoom, because he will show you all the steps that are started there, going there, going there. Therefore, you know the objective reality of Zoom. That's what they claim. I don't know then how much will that claim go if, for example, if the condition does not allow us to use Zoom there, and then you see there are those, but for them, that's enough evidence that they have the truth about Zoom. Because what they will do then, they will just have to go out there and then get the steps, which is the tool that was used by Eric in producing Zoom. Then once they know that, they know the truth. What about then the ontology of it? So the ontology, it has naive, realistic ontology, which means that by means of our senses, we perceive the world directly. So in other words, we know the truth of the world by means of our senses. So if I can see the steps that were followed by Eric in designing this, I would believe that. Then I simply say, no, I have objective reality of Zoom. So in other words, then our senses, we believe them that they produce, they show us the truth. So when we smell the truth. When we feel the truth. When we look at something, we observe the truth. Whatever we do with our senses, according to this paradigm, thank you, it's correct in terms of its ontology. So what we have then, we can control the world. You can use that object now to control the world. So when we have the icon that represents Zoom, we just click the icon and use the icon, because we know the truth about Zoom taken from the steps that were used by Eric to design Zoom. Therefore, then we know the truth. So there's one truth then, and you can control that truth. And you look at the situation again. They are saying, if you drive a car, use a steering wheel. But controlling the car that you don't even know how the engine was constructed, and that, but you control the reality, which is the car. The car is going well, etc. And then for this paradigm, then they are saying you know the reality about the car. Then, but others will question that, but for them, that's what is happening. So when you take this paradigm, epistemology is that of objectivist, and then the ontology is that of naive realist ontology, which it's giving us there. In terms of methodology, it's like experiment, where you experiment with things and manipulate variables to produce what is tested or measurable. So they believe that the truth is always out there. All what you need is a relevant theory which you can use to take it. If you want to know the length of your table, the answer is there. You take the tape measure, you have collected the truth. So if the table is 2 meters, you know the truth through the tape measure. So for them, they experiment using those tools to make sure that they give you one answer. You take someone from another country to measure the same table will give the same answer. That's what they call one reality. There's one reality, they have truth. And then in terms of axiology, where they talk about ethics, they simply say you need to maximum the outcome. So you do something that will give us high outcomes in terms of helping the project that we are doing, and also in helping humanities in general. To say people will use this bridge to cross here, or people will use Zoom to teach or do whatever they want to do. And at the same time, you have respondents who were participating in whom you asked them to respond to your question. So in other paradigms, they will say these are participants or subjects, whatever they may call it. But you have that against the process. So the ethical part of it here for this paradigm is that you have to do a project that, or an object or a tool that will be able to advance our discipline or our project. If a project is a mathematics project, it must advance mathematics and also advance the world around us. So just the whole world should be able to benefit from it. And also it must be able to help the respondents to advance on their knowledge. So it takes those three into consideration, that the project as such, which is the discipline, must advance, and then it must also have a human part of it, and then it must also help your participants. So for them, that's how they stay. So when you choose the paradigm, then remember to talk about its epistemology, ontology, methodology, and axiology. So axiology being the ethics of what you are doing, how you address ethics. Methodology, what method then are being used to manipulate the variables, etc., etc. And then when you talk about ontology, what is the reality? What is the truth? What is the nature of reality? Then this one will simply say, yes, through our senses, we can get exactly the correct answer, which will then be able to help us. And then when it comes to epistemology, how we come to know, then there again, we think things are objectively presented to us, therefore we work according to that. So then we move to interpretivist paradigm. Interpretivist paradigm tend to be the opposite of the positivist paradigm, because here they are talking about human experiences, to say we need to understand the subjective world human experiences. So they believe here that the world has many answers, that are constructed by different groups. So as a result, they may even call it, this is constructivism or constructivist paradigm. You see, when you read other studies, they are not going to use interpretive paradigm, but they will use the notion of constructivism, etc., etc. But you need to understand that when people read those articles, they tend to take what is useful to them. If interpretivism help them to understand the reality better than constructivism, they will choose that. But whichever you choose, it will be coming from your subconscious mind because you were trained to believe that. So our subconscious mind has all these things because it has stored all these things. It cannot reject any of the experiences that you have, but it can only suppress it if new information is coming. But that does not mean you have removed it from your subconscious mind. It will only always be there. It's just that you need to put more information in order to suppress those things that you think are no longer useful to you. But to say that in the subconscious mind, you may remove something, it's not possible because what is happening there is that the process that is going there is either you add something or you multiply something, but it doesn't have subtraction or subtraction or division. Therefore, what you think you have removed from your thoughts, from your mind, is something that is suppressed in your subconscious mind. But when things come, bring that back, trigger that back, that's when you realize that, oh, I know this thing. That's why now the values that you have, you don't know where they came from. Because from grade 1 to university level, you were exposed in different content. So you had content that you studied, etc., etc. But you don't know which piece of the content produced you as a person who is independent, now. So independent as a value, that is independence as a value. You don't know where it comes from. Integrity, you don't know where it came from. But one of the content or one of the things that you were exposed to was grabbed by your subconscious mind, and then your subconscious mind had to keep all those things so that and then you draw from the subconscious mind. So in the interpretivist paradigm, then they enjoy seeing the experience, the subjective experiences on how you explain things to them and then write about those from there. So in this paradigm, then it makes an effort to get into the head of the participants being studied, so to speak, and to understand how they interpret what they are interpreting. So when they understand the interpretation of that particular individual, they can then report to say, this is what seemed to be driving this particular individual. So the key tenets then of the interpretivist paradigm is that reality is socially constructed. So it is socially constructed. If you want to measure a length of a pen or a table, they may not rely on the measuring tape or ruler or whatever is used by positivist paradigm, by the positivist paradigm. But they will ask for people to say, let's take 10 people and then tell us about this table. People who are using this table, or who have manufactured this table, or people who have been in the process of ordering table, they will ask them to say, okay, tell us, how long what do you think is the length of this table? The one who is manufacturing the table will simply say, no, you know what? When we manufacture them, when we make them to be 1.5 meters. The other one, you say, no, we make them to be 1.2 meters, etc., etc. So what will then be the answer then in having so many answers? That's what they call subjective reality. And then the researcher then will have to use his own experience to select the most convincing answer, to say, today, interpretivist may choose the answer, let's say it's 1.5, because they're convinced by this person who said it's 1.5 because it's manufacturing them. But when they conducted the same study, you may find that they will simply say, but this time it's 1.2 because we are convinced by someone who is using these tables. So the answer then is subjective. So the world then it's according to the experience of the researcher to interpret for the readers. But we don't have one answer when we use interpretivist, when we deal with interpretivist. Interpretivist will tell you that there are multi-answer out there. Therefore, they are constructed by those individuals. So when they tell you that this table is 1.5 and the other one will say it's 1.2, you see they are constructing that for you. When they construct that for you, you will then again construct on the basis of the answer that you have generated from them, and then decide to say, what is the most convincing finding here? And then you give the finding. So it doesn't mean then when you do it again, you will have the same answers, because for them we have we have many answers for the same issue. But whereas positivists, they'll simply say, no, 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 there's no need for you to panic. We have one answer. Take a tape measure, measure that thing, done. So they don't have that stress. So which is different from that of interpretivist. So this paradigm then assume a subjectivist epistemology, a relativist ontology, a naturalistic or a naturalist methodology. So which means that, and then in terms of axiology, then it needs a balance between what the experience of the researcher based on his or her experience. That must be balanced, but we'll discuss it in the next slide. But basically, that's what interpretivist paradigm is saying. So when you deal with this paradigm, when you choose this paradigm, you must know that there are methods that are normally used here, like naturalist, where you deal with allow things to unfold naturally without using a tool to change, to manipulate. It also relies on stories, where you write stories, and then there are case studies where you conduct a case study, or you bring a grounded theory where, like the example I indicated earlier on, to say where you go to a traditional leaders' place where Western theories are not working, then you go there, you find that when you deal with that situation, you will have to generate data. Once you generate your data, then you categorize it to produce a theory. So that theory then, or the concept that you have produced from there, is called a grounded theory, because it's within the practice that where you were. There's also phenomenology. There are quite a number of methods that you can choose from, but try to align the method with your paradigm. So the paradigm should give you a language in terms of that ontology, epistemology, axiology, and methodology. So methods should be aligned with that paradigm. So what is then the epistemology of this kind of paradigm? Subjectivist epistemology means that research make meaning of their data through that way, so through their own way of thinking, their their cognitive processes, but they do that interacting with their participants. So that's why we call them participants here, because they are participating in the production or in the generation of data. So here, they don't collect the data. But when you go to positivists, they collect or gather the data, because the data are out there waiting for them to collect. But here, you generate or you produce data through interaction with your participants. So that's why here, then they'll simply say, you need to interact with participants in order to generate what they call subjective reality. So then that has to be constructed through the interaction, the social interaction between the participants and the researcher. That's what they call epistemology of this paradigm. And ontology, then they will simply think that there are multi-truths out there, and the truth can only be understood through the interaction between the researcher and the project that is being conducted, and also the participants. But at the end, the researcher will interpret what these people gave as the findings of the study. So the researcher's interpretation will be then the one that will give us the final product. But remember, the researcher has constructed that reality. It does not mean it's objective reality, but it's a constructed reality, which may change tomorrow if the researcher is conducting the same study, because participants may change. When they change, they may give different answers, then which give different outcomes. And it also have a methodology, which is naturalist methodology. So here, you follow the nature. For example, you just go out there without carrying tools or theories. You just ask them questions naturally. What is this and this and this? You record that. What is that and that? They reflect. You just bring all those things, and then you can then be able to interpret that into results. So the methods there are naturalistic in nature. Therefore, they can be. You don't even have to buy the interview. You just go there and interview them. So that's how then they say that. But in terms of then oxology, that in terms of what you call ethics, issues of ethics, they should be, the researcher then should try from specific values that he or she possess, should reflect on his value. If he's an honest person, and this person should use this as a basis of interpreting what the participant will give. But the values that are generated there should then also reflect what the participants seem to think about the values of that researcher. So that's how the move is going there. With critical paradigm then, which others would say this is a transformative paradigm because it's transforming people. So this paradigm then situates its research in social justice issues and seek to address issues of politics, social, economical issues, etc. But the main goal here is to liberate some people who are oppressed because of certain issues of politics or social issues or economic issues, different issues, are producing people who seem to be oppressed. So this paradigm then has to transform their thinking and transform the situation in the area so that these people will be liberated. That's what this paradigm is doing. It's there to liberate those whom are identified as being oppressed. So that's why then now you may call it transformative paradigm, because it will transform at the end of that research. When you have used critical paradigm, you might make sure that you are able to tell us exactly what new situation was generated through your research in order to liberate those who were minor in the system, those who were were oppressed. Then you have that. So if your study is trying to liberate people or transform people, then critical paradigm will be your better choice in dealing with that. It also has its own epistemology, in which it then is called transactional epistemology, where the interaction between the researcher and the participant, it's important so that the researcher will understand what seemed to be oppressing them or confusing them, and then the researcher will work according to that with the participant. In terms of ontology, there are multi-truths out there as well, but now we have to follow the history. Historically, realism, where we follow that in order to see where they started this process of being oppressed, and then we work according to that. So when we use then examples like the one that we started with of creating Zoom by Eric, if then Eric was taking a positivist position, or you investigate the process of Zoom using positivist paradigm, all what you do, you need a theory of constructing Zoom. Then you follow that, and then you'll understand if Eric did justice in building Zoom or in developing Zoom. But if you were to take an interpretivist paradigm to deal with that issue, you were going to say, we expected you to construct or to develop Zoom. Then after that, you reflect on it by writing steps on that. And then critical paradigm, then those will simply say, no, you know what? You don't have to develop Zoom without knowing if there are people there who will be liberated by Zoom. Who are these target? Who is your target group here? Who was oppressed that needed to be operated by Zoom? Maybe he was going to say, yes, teachers, because teachers need this for teaching during COVID-19. You see now, it's liberating teachers from the lockdown, but they had to teach using Zoom. You see, that's how then the critical paradigm will work there. So it has its own methods then. The methods there that are normally so, but axiology then you have to make sure that the culture, the norm, you respect all those issues around those people, because those are the bases that sometimes lead to oppression. Therefore, the ethical part of it is that we are able to respect the culture and the norms of everything around them. Okay, then now when we move then to its methods, then there are methods that you may choose from, like participatory, action research, theory, all those are normally, you'll find that studies that are under this paradigm use maybe one of these or more, or one or two of these, something like that. But you need to choose carefully according to the need for your study. Then we also have what you call pragmatic paradigm. Pragmatic paradigm, this one is talking about practice, that something that you can practice. So it will simply say it promotes more practical and pluralistic approach that could allow a combination of methods. So you have different methods. And when you combine those methods, they should be able to shed the light on what the actual action of the participant. So this is what the participant has done. What was the belief behind what this participant was doing? What are the consequences or the outcome of that action and the belief? Then next time, then when we think about that particular participant, we will now treat that because he has done this, he will continue to do this, etc., etc. So if it is working, then we can encourage it. If it is not working, then we don't encourage it. So 3 things that are observed by pragmatists. 1 is the actual action. 2 is the belief behind the action. 3 is the consequence of the action. So they put that in practice. So when they do the practical part of solving your problem, they need those 3 things. So in terms of epistemology, then it will look for that relation, that is relationship in research are the best determined by what the researcher will deem appropriate to that particular study. So in other words, the researcher will decide on what exactly is working. Together with the participants, then they will then work together to produce what is working for them. If they were to conduct a study using pragmatic paradigm about Zoom that was constructed by Eric, it was going to be a matter of saying, what are our needs here? And then our needs are this and this and this. So for us, this is what will work. Then Zoom was going to be constructed according to those individuals. It will work for those individuals in practice. So pragmatic paradigm then will then allow different approaches to come in because it's about what will work. If quantitative data will work well, use it. If qualitative data will work well, use that. But whatever will work, or you may combine both, you see, so that you make sure that values that are generated there, they are generated in such a way that they are doing justice into the intelligence, internal intelligence of those individuals whose needs are being addressed. So it's not really about the researcher, but it's about the needs of those whose needs are being addressed. So they should reflect on it. After reflecting on it, then you construct a model that will work for them. They practice it, etc. That's why usually this paradigm work well with action research, where you design something, you plan something, they take it, they teach using that tool, then they are observed, and then after that, they will come back and reflect. So pragmatic paradigm then is flexible. And in pragmatic paradigm, you don't have to select terms. Because, for example, if you work with a positivist paradigm, you can't say data generation because you don't generate data. But what you do, you just collect the data or gather the data. Use tape measure, you know the data, then you record it there. But when you go to interpretivist paradigm, you can't say you collect or you gather the data, but you should be saying data generation or data production, because you generate data through your interaction with your participants. But in terms of a pragmatic paradigm, you can use any term. All terms are working because If you want to bring a quantitative part, you can bring it. If you want to bring a qualitative part, you can bring it. It doesn't matter which direction you are taking your study to. So that's where I summarize them. So here's a summary of them. So I even included the post there, which is post-colonial, post-structural, etc. But I'm not going to discuss those because I just I was trying to indicate that there are many others that are existing out there, therefore. But the common one, these are the four that are normally common. When you come across one of them or you decide to choose one of them, you must then choose wise. So like when you have positivist paradigm, interpretivist paradigm, critical paradigm, pragmatic paradigm, what is the reason then for positivist paradigm? Is to predict. There you have to predict. The reason is to predict. So in other words, you need to discover new laws or natural laws so that you can predict and control the events. So now if you were to design a Zoom, you design Zoom in such a way that you have certain laws that will then be followed by the users of Zoom. So if you were to teach using certain method, that method will have its own rules that you need to follow. So its own theories that you need to follow in order to make sure that you control reality out there, even if you don't know the reality. So a good example is that of Zoom, that you see the icon, you control Zoom, but you don't know the objective reality of Zoom, how it was constructed using voltages as well as circuits, but you control it. So here then you design something that will help you to control the situation. But this side on the interpretivist paradigm, there you just want to understand the meanings of whatever action that is happening, the social actions. So you don't want to change them. You don't want, all what you do, you just discuss with your participants. They'll give you answers. You interpret the answers, then you are done. You don't have to go back to say, hey, but this thing should change. Like, nah, you don't do that. But if you go to critical paradigm, that's where you'll change then to say, this is what you were doing. But you see, this thing is disturbing you because it should be like this and this. And so you empower them through your findings so that they can change. And you also change their society and they change the situation that where you are conducting this particular thing, so that those who are oppressed will then be able to be liberated through the process of your research. And then you also have a pragmatic paradigm. The reason for that is to get people to reflect on their identities for the action. So you give them reflection, they reflect so that what they've reflected on can be put into practice. So you have the practice and then they can combine different methods, you combine them, you use them. It's nice like that. But what about the nature of social reality? In positivist paradigm, reality is objective and is found. So whatever reality that you want to know, there's a theory that can help you to find it. That's what they are saying there. But in terms of interpretivism or interpretivist paradigm, you cannot have just one truth, because all the truth that you have were constructed. So your subconscious mind has constructed all the truth that you have. So they may be externally observed, but you constructed them according to your own need. So they are subjective, they were like that. So all what you need to tell us then is to justify your choice of choosing them. And then when you go to pragmatic paradigm, all individuals have their own unique interpretation of what is happening. Therefore, whatever is working for them will then be encouraged because they cannot change it. It is their reality. Then the nature of truth, what is the nature of truth? According to positivist paradigm, we said it has one truth. There is one truth that can be discovered. So it's out there. All what you need is a theory that will discover the truth. That's why you say, when you say the purpose of the study, you may say to investigate, because when you investigate, there's only one answer that you should come up with. You can say determine. When you determine, there's one answer that you come with. So that's why here they said there is one truth that can be discovered. But here under interpretivist, there are many. There is many truth. Truth is many. And this side again, where you go to critical paradigm, truth is many and constitutes a system of social economic power. So there's power behind the truth that is created. So if you start to say, let me create this thing in order to liberate certain individuals, you create that because there are issues of power, that others are oppressed, people are not equal. So under pragmatic paradigm, truth is many and unique based on individualist beliefs, actions, as well as consequences. So what we have observed in practice as your belief and the actual action and the outcome of that will then be the basis of the nature of truth under that paradigm. So the nature of discourse, and then the discourse is structured here, as we indicated in the triangle there. It's structured here is dialogue where people discuss in order to produce that truth. But here it has one to whatever last step, you just follow that because it's structured. Here is also it's influenced by political issues. So you need to work on it in such a way that you discuss the political issues which people are running away from, because the more they run away from, then the more they oppress certain individuals. And then here the discourse is that we need something usable. So they talk about something that is usable, which can be put in practice. So in terms of that communication, nature of communication is transmission. So it's coming from one to the other, is coming from one side to the other side. But here it can come from both sides, from this side and this side is the interaction. But in critical paradigm, it's just about decision making to say who is oppressed, and then let's change this system. Here in the pragmatic paradigm, individual decision make or take a decision on what is working for them. So these are just the summary of what I've presented that side. So when you receive this, then you will then be able to see how I summarize them. Then when you choose a paradigm, you choose a paradigm in such a way that it goes with the underpinning concept or principles. So there are other issues there here that you may also consider in doing your research, using terms. The terms are important here when you use the terms. Like I indicated before, if you use qualitative data, so the paradigm that will talk about quantitative data, you will be talking about numbers there. You know that numbers will be important, and that, but this side will be talking about quality, the depth of your discussion or your justification of what we are doing. And then this side, we also generate some hypotheses to say teaching strategies are effective in teaching grade 12. Therefore, that's the hypothesis that you need to test. But in this side, research questions are okay. You don't have to deal with the issue of hypotheses and that. And then this side you deal with variables, but this side with complexity of the situation. So variables, you have independent, dependent, etc., etc. This side you control whatever tool you have. You will have it in order to control, But here you use it as an example of to say, but last year we did not arrest so and so who had this and this. Therefore, which means this one too should not be arrested, etc. So use some examples. So this side, quantitatively, we call them respondents. But when it comes to qualitative studies, they call them participants because they are negotiating to produce the data. This side, they'll say they collect data. This side, they'll say they produce or generate data. And also this side, they may sort of gather data gathering, they gather the data. So yeah. So generalizability, this side, they talk about transferability. Say, you say, this thing is working worldwide. So if you say 1 + 1 is 2, you generalize that answer. So everyone will believe, will say that is that. But if you come this side, if you say 1 + 1 is 2, then it will depend where you are within the context in which you are saying that. So you will then apply that in only if the context is similar to the context which you used to conduct your study. But this side, they'll say the whole world will say that because for them, the method they use, they believe they are subjective. They are objective, but this side are subjective. So it will only be applicable when the context is the same. And then this side, they talk about they are being objective. This side, they enjoy being subjective, etc., etc. But mostly these are combined by what you call pragmatic paradigm. Pragmatic paradigm can use any of these, and then you find that things are working well in terms of them. So colleagues, then I think then I will have to end it there, but indicate to you that whatever you see, you must remember is not representing the truth, but is representing the world you have in your subconscious mind. For example, if I say, if I ask you to say, what do you see here? Most of you will see only the vase. They'll say, no, we can see the vase, there is the vase there. But others will see faces around this. So now what you have in the subconscious mind is what will help you to see something here. The something that is here is in your subconscious mind. It may not necessarily exist to everyone, but is in your subconscious mind. Because if I can ask you to say, what do you see here? Maybe some of you may not see faces around the vase. They may only see the vase only. So what is happening then is that the way we think, we accept whatever the user interface or the paradigm that shaped us to see that reality as it is. So that will be the end of my story.
Thank you so much, Prof, for your informative presentation. We really do appreciate for your time. I think you were on time and you were able to finish up your presentation before 30 minutes. I think we'll use that 30 minutes to engage with you whenever there are some questions. If students do have got questions and colleagues, they can pose those questions maybe on the post, or else they can raise up their hands so that they can speak accordingly or question that.
Okay.
From the floor, is there any question, clarity-seeking questions that people would want to ask? While Prof is still here with us in terms of paradigms.
There's Taiwan.
Yes, in that order, Taiwan, and then iPhone, you can take us through.
iPhone. Okay, Tawa, unmute yourself first. Tawa, unmute yourself first. It's muted. First unmute yourself.
Okay, let me ask.
Let's see if we cannot unmute him this side. Where is he? Where is Tower? Yeah. Okay, let's see if we can
Okay.
unmute. There you go. Oh, unmuted again. Okay, let's unmute it.
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Hello,
Yeah.
Prof.
Thank you. Hello, Tower.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. I think much has been learned. On my side, I don't have a question, but there is something that is bothering my mind, and I need to ask if it is doable. For example, if you work in the interpretivist paradigm, and then during data, you say you are generating data. You've stated that in your methodology. So my little concern, or what is really taking me too far, is that why is it that when a particular study is in the interpretivist paradigm, then during data collection chapter, we are not allowed to title the chapter to say data generating. Instead, almost all studies we do, we say data collection chapter. I mean the chapter after methodology or whatever. The chapter that deals with data. Why, if we are using the interpretivist paradigm, we are not allowed to title that chapter data generating chapter. Rather, we still use data generating chapter. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there it depends on how your supervisor will position that, because other supervisors may allow you to betray your paradigm under the umbrella that you are bringing newness. Because if the language of the paradigm is data generation or data production,
Yeah.
they may say that no, in order to bring new, let's use this term and try to practice to collect data. So in other words, they try to bring in statistics or quantitative data within the frame of interpretivist paradigm. So, but others will do that deliberately without being conscious about the data that are not collected, but that are generated. Because what you collect is what exists out there, and then you use a tool to collect it. But where you interview them, you are generating data instead of producing data.
Okay.
So you instead of collecting data, yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
So in other words, Tower, you make sure that when you do your study, respect the language of your paradigm.
Yes.
Even if it means you even indicate that to your supervisor to say, if the language of this thing, of this paradigm say I must do this, let me respect the paradigm.
Okay.
Because if you don't respect it, you are betraying the paradigm. Other examiners will take you on task.
Okay.
But it may go through your supervisor, but when it comes to when it comes to examiners, what if one examiner is very strict on the language of your paradigm? Therefore, you will fail because you betrayed your paradigm.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much, Prof, to bring the clarity to us. iPhone, are you still there?
There's Pundo now.
Yeah, I can see your comment here, iPhone. You are saying, thank you so much, Prof. This has been the best presentation. I feel refreshed, and now I'm going back to my paper to edit somewhere. Let me take Fundo Koza.
Thank you.
iPhone, your hand is still up. Can I give you a chance?
Maybe it's history.
Maybe it's history?
Historical. Yeah, it's historical hand, I think.
Then from iPhone is Fundo.
Mm-hmm.
You can
Fundo.
speak. Unmute yourself, please.
Oh, Mfundo is muted. Is muted. Let me try to unmute him. Oh no.
Oh, thank you, Prof.
Over there. There you go. Yeah. Now yeah, there you go.
Okay, thank you, Prof, for the presentation. It was worth listening to. My question is, I'm inclined in interpretive paradigm, but when I'm interpreting my findings, I find myself conflicting with my voice to an extent that sometimes I don't really get into the notion of where to what extent should my voice be heard when interpreting the findings, and therefore it just becomes a challenge because in some chapters I was able to maneuver with that, but then now when it comes to interpreting findings using the interpretive paradigm, it just becomes a challenge. I'm just trying to get to what extent should my voice be heard in a way. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mfundo, for that question. Your voice, Mfundo, is that you should interpret it from the values that you have. So it should be led by your values. For example, if you're an honest person, when you interpret those findings, we should see the value of being honest, interpreting the findings without necessarily having your participant being honest as well. But what we see, it should be the value led by your own interpretation, your own position. But in interpretivist paradigm, that depth of what you are saying, it's your decision. Because remember there, you just have to understand what is happening, not necessarily transforming those participants. But if you were to say, I'm moving now to critical paradigm, you were going to be forced to go as far as transforming them. But within the interpretivist paradigm, I'm sure you are working well there, you see.
Okay,
And
thank you so much.
Thank you. There's also another question on the chart that says, what is the problem in betraying your paradigm? So in other words, what is the problem if I say, instead, when I work with positivist paradigm, I simply say data generation or data, you see, like that. Now, when that is happening, then it will be saying that you remember that we have readers here. When you have readers, readers should be able to understand it within the language of the paradigm, so much that for masters, we have 2 examiners. It may happen that these 2 examiners will need the language of your paradigm. If you then betray your paradigm, they'll fail your study, because they'll think that you don't know this paradigm. You don't understand this paradigm. Therefore, you fail because you betrayed your paradigm. So the danger in betraying your paradigm, it can be nice when you write to say why you are dealing with interpretivist paradigm. You simply say, data gathering. You enjoy that, nice way. But going to the reader who happen to be your examiners, they may hit you harder, where you find that this study has to fail, has to be resubmitted for examination, because only to find that the only thing that was happening there is that you betrayed your paradigm. So that's how then the issues are going there. In terms of betraying your paradigm, you anticipate that examiners out there are aware of the language of your paradigm.
Thank you so much, Prof. And Prof, there is another question on the chat. Prof Bengu, you are noted. After that question, you will come through. The question reads as, I would like to know the differences between research philosophers or research underpinnings which is research assumptions and paradigms. Which one comes first? Do we start with research assumptions or underpinnings before research paradigms or paradigms, and vice versa?
Usually research assumption, others use that interchangeable research assumption or research paradigm. But others will simply talk about the underpinning concept of each of the paradigm. So where you say you talk about positivist paradigm, when you talk about it, you must make sure that you talk about epistemology, ontology, methodology, and axiology. So those are the underpinning assumption around that positivist paradigm. So you put them there. And because others will simply say that these are models of thinking or something like that. So when these terms are being used, allow your supervisor to guide you to use one language. If you use the concept of paradigm, just use the concept of paradigm, because even what we call a quantitative approach, others will say quantitative approach, but other examiners would like to see it as a quantitative methodological paradigm. You see, now they call it another paradigm. Others will say these are approaches, these are. So the language, then negotiate it with your supervisor in order to make sure that you use the language that is used by your discipline. Thank you.
All right, Prof Bengu, you can come through. Prof Bengu, are you still with us? Or unmute yourself? Okay, let's
not allowing. Okay, no thanks. It was not allowing me to
There you go.
to unmute myself. Chair, thank you so much, Prof Koza. You know, initially when I raised my hand, I just wanted to thank you very, very much for the level of the level of thinking, as well as the practicality. I mean, the practical ways in which you are simplifying very difficult and highly conceptual ideas for our students. I wanted to thank you very much for that. And also the second point was that drew my attention was that of betraying the paradigm, and you also responded superbly to that as well. And also maybe I would just want to highlight this for our students, that some of the people who betray us more are the authors of the research books. Now, those are some of the culprits who betray us. One of them is Creswell. I'm sorry, but I understand him because of where he's coming from. Sometimes he explains that is where he's coming from. Then I would understand why he continues to use words that are a concept that are used by positivists and so on and so on. But the other way, maybe to alert the student, is that some take these concepts in a more generic fashion to say, well, data collection was the term that was used then, including validity and reliability. And now when they're using qualitative research, and now they go back to using reliability and validity, something that is not actually applicable to the kinds of research that they do. So they need to be guarded. I'm very happy that you emphasize that point of betraying the paradigm, because some of our students get into trouble, and then the reviewers think that they don't understand what they are writing when they don't see alignment in terms of the concepts, the methodologies, and all of those things, when they are not aligned. And the question that they ask in terms of research questions and the theories that they use, and all of if there's no alignment, they think that this person doesn't know what he's talking about, and therefore they give a very negative critique and so on. And then some of them even want a resubmission because of such mistakes that students make. Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you, Prof. Pengu. You will really nick the nail on the spot, you see, because we must remember that when we do this research, we are not just doing it for our supervisors, but we are doing it for the readers. Who are the readers? These are your two examiners. If there's a conflict between the two of them, then we bring another third examiners. One comment is asking here to say, how many examiners do we have for PhD students? We have 3 examiners, the international, the national, and the internal. So all these examiners, if you try to take a chance of betraying your paradigm, one of them may just let you down just because of that, and you find yourself in trouble.
Yeah.
And someone I think others responded to that one who was saying, what books can I use in terms of, there are quite a number of books, I think, or I will then send them to the organizers of the webinar so that you can see books on methodology, especially the latest ones. And then remember that when they write, they may betray the paradigm. Don't end up betraying it, but take what is working for you. That's all.
Yeah.
Take only what is working for you.
Thank you so much, Prof. And there's a question on research instrument, and there's a question on theoretical framework. I think some of the question will be addressed during other support program or other sessions, like next week on the 8th. We are dealing with the issues of theoretical framework and the conceptual framework. So on that note, your questions will be unpacked on that session. Are there any other questions, students or colleagues, or some of the input that you may have in terms of research paradigms?
Thank you.
I cannot see any hand up.
Yeah, it look like we are done.
Yeah. I cannot see any questions on the chat.
Yes.
But
So what I'll do then, Dr. Mpungose, I'll send you and Dr. Naidu, I'll send you this book, some books that I normally use for research that guide students, and also some articles that they can use for paradigms and that. So they will take it from there. Yes.
Well, thank you so much,
Thanks,
Prof.
Prof. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I
Thank you
appreciate
so
your
much.
presentation. The last word
you.
from Dr. Naidu.
Yeah, maybe I just want to say a very big thank you to Professor Khoza for that interesting but very insightful presentation. And as you could see in the comments, that we all know that educational paradigms are a huge problem for many students. Just to wrap their head around, you know, the terminology alone gets confusing, like ontology, epistemology. But I think for me, the biggest takeaway, and this is what students appreciated as well, was you're talking about the coherence and alignment within a paradigm. So that table that you ended off with, I think if students decide that they're using the interpretive paradigm, the language and the terminology associated with that paradigm should be aligned and coherent. So that's an important point. But yeah, once again, on behalf of Dr. Mpungose, myself, who organized these, and for the students, I'm very encouraged to see at one stage we had more than 105 participants. So that means that, like, whether it's master's or PhD students are really engaging and attending these support sessions. And I can only hope that this would assist them greatly in either writing up their proposals, their chapters, and their dissertation. So yeah, thank you again, Prof. Khoza. And just to remind students, as Dr. Mpungose said, next week, Thursday session on the 8th, Professor Michael Samuels will be taking you through the difference between a theoretical and conceptual framework, and it would build on very nicely from where Prof. Khoza left of today. Yeah, so that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I conclude with, I see one chart there that is indicating that what is the difference between qualitative paradigm and interpretivist paradigm. Qualitative, others will say qualitative methodological paradigm, but others would say that is an approach for interpretivist paradigm. So qualitative approach, it's an approach that is used in interpretivist paradigm. So it may not be a paradigm as such, but others would say it's a qualitative methodological paradigm. But the higher one will be interpretivist paradigm, which will use qualitative data then, where we call it qualitative methodological paradigm. So I think then they are answered there. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much, Prof. And
Okay.
thank you so much to all the attendees who have attended this program. We really do appreciate. With those few words, allow me to officially close this meeting. Thank you, and have a lovely.
Thank you. Thank you, Doc. Thank you.